Hello and welcome to Sarat Chandra IAS Academy, where your dreams are our mission. This is Yatharth here, and today we will be talking about constitutional punctuality. The main focus of this video is to how to read editorials which come in the Hindu or Indian Express and how to use them in note making. What are the points that we should focus on or note down? What are the points that we should skip? So we'll see this all. The editorial which I have picked up, as I told you in the last video also, is the importance of constitutional punctuality. So the first thing that we should note down from here is the term itself. Constitutional punctuality. So this is the first thing that we should mean to define. So we'll do that also in the end of the lecture based upon what we read in the editorial. So these are the terms that we can use in our answer writing also as an decoration, let's say, or ornamentation in our answers. So if we use these terms, our answer will look very effective. So let's see what are the important points from this editorial. So I'll keep reading and also keep telling you to note down the important points. So recently the Tamil Nadu Legislative Assembly, so we are talking about the Legislative Assembly, State Legislative Assembly, so passed a resolution seeking to provide for the time frame for governors to act on the bill passed by the state legislature. So this is the thing that we talked in the last video. So I hope you have the context to all this. So the motivation was that the governor of Tamil Nadu, R.N. Ravi, had withheld assent to as many as 13 bills. So this thing is not important, that who is the governor, what are the bills that he has withheld assent to, because it's very dynamic. So you need to skip these dynamic things. From 13, they could have been 14 or 15 or even 11. That wouldn't have mattered anyway for us. So overly dynamic thing you can skip. So last week, the Supreme Court of India, while disposing of a case filed by something, remarked that governor should not sit over bills indefinitely. So this is also the thing. So Article 200 we talked about. So Supreme Court commented on this Article 200, the time frame. So eventually Supreme Court will be the one to solve this issue, which is between the center and the states. So taking this sentiment further, the idea of constitutional punctuality need not be restricted to gubernatorial offices alone. All constitutional high offices, including those of President of India and Speakers of Assemblies, must suo motu evolve guidelines to discharge duties in a time-bound manner. So what we are talking about is punctuality here. Punctuality is related to time. That means being on time. So what is constitutional punctuality? That means whatever the posts defined in the constitution and whoever are those post holders must perform their duty at the correct time. So this is the constitutional punctuality. And what is suo motu? Suo motu means on its own. So this issue which is coming in the right now, the office of the governor, so this should not be restricted now, the guidelines which will be formed by the Supreme Court eventually. So should not be restricted to the office of governor, but everyone who is an, let's say, constitutional post holder should suo motu take cognizance of the matter and develop guidelines for the time-bound action on their duty. So this is the term which is meaning of the constitutional punctuality. So which are those offices? President of India, let's say, plus Speaker of the Assemblies. These two we are talking about right now. Additionally, the governor. So in prelims also question can come from these three. In prelims what happens that the question does not come directly from whatever topic is being discussed sometimes. It comes from related. Alright, so if these three are mentioned, let's say in the news, then the question can come from here. So in the resolution passed on April 10th, let's say, the Tamil Nadu Assembly urged the Union Government and President to advise the Governor to decide on the bills passed by the state legislature within a reasonable time period. So again and again time is being talked about. So unless there is any, let's say, judgment in this by the Supreme Court or any policy change by the center or the state, it is futile to talk about this. So the resolution has been passed. We'll see what happens in the future. So argued that it was important to sovereignty and the legislature and ultimately safeguard parliamentary democracy. So these two things we have already talked about, simply federalism and the democracy. So these two are inherent principles of the constitution and the democracy, but very much against the current politics in the country, or which has always been. So subsequently, the Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu also wrote to his counterparts in the opposition ruled states and encouraged them to pass similar resolutions. So this is all part of the politics. So we need not discuss all this. These are political moves. Very dynamic. Alright. So in case of, let's say, Telangana, for an example, the state has already filed a writ petition. So writ petition we can note from here that what is this writ petition, where is it filed, and in what cases it can be filed. Can it be filed in this case? So writ petition seeking direction from the Supreme Court to the governor to decide on the bills passed by the assembly in a timely manner. So this is the whole context, let's say. So let's see what is the origin of this issue. Like, why did this issue come at all? So let's discuss this. Why is there no time frame defined in the constitution? So the gist of the matter is, what is the origin of this problem, is two things. The first thing is that the drafters of the constitution, the drafting assembly, in their contemporaneous wisdom, expected Raj Bhavans to be nominated with those who would discharge their sovereign duties beyond the confines of the political partisanship. So there was an earnest attempt from the constitution makers to keep the politics away from the constitution. But they could have known that the loopholes in the constitution, there is of course loopholes which can be discovered anywhere. So in the constitution also there are loopholes such as this. So they will be exploited by the politics in the future. So they did not expect so possibly. The second thing is, in Article 200, which is what we are talking about, there are three options in front of the governor. Whether he is supposed to assent to the bill, or to withhold or assent, or reserve a bill for the consideration of the president. So the nub of the issue is that governors have wrongly understood the function to grant assent to have endowed them with some discretionary responsibility. That means the governors have been using this option as the discretionary power, which we discussed in the last video. So you can watch that here. So however, the direct import of the words used in the constitution, as well as the composite reading of the debates in the constitution assembly, portrays an altogether different interpretation. So now we are talking about the interpretation of the constitution. So whose function is this? This is the function of the Supreme Court. So this is why the Supreme Court is the correct way forward, whatever the origin of this problem could have been. So let's see the example. So the original draft Article 175 moved for discussion in 1949. So this is not important for us, but it's important for the, let's say, the history of this issue. So provided that where there is only one house of the legislature and bill has been passed by that house, the governor may in his discretion return the bill together with a message requesting that the house will reconsider the bill. Now what was the debate by the B.R. Ambedkar with related to this article? That there can be no room for a governor acting on the discretion. So this becomes an important part of our answer writing, that what did a contemporary political leader and also the part or the head of the Constituent Assembly thought about this issue. So this can be an introduction that B.R. Ambedkar on July 30, 1949 said that there can be no room, or basically did not support, for a governor acting on the discretion, and recommended removing the phrase governor in his discretion. So this can become a very good introduction to the answer. Alright. So therefore the final article adopted by the Constitution Assembly and embedded in the Constitution explicitly negates any discretionary power. This position has been fortified by 7-judge bench of the Supreme Court in Shamsher Singh. So this case or this case you should also note down. So from here, two important things arise. That one, you should note down the political thought or the individual thought of any good political thinkers. So in this case, B.R. Ambedkar, and also note down the name of any cases which are related to it. So these both can be used in the answer writing in the introduction itself. So Shamsher Singh and ANR versus the state of Punjab, 1974. So wherein it was held that the discretion of the governor is extremely limited. Now what is this extremely limited? So this is again questionable. And even in such rare cases shall act in a manner that is not detrimental to the interest of the state. So basically saying that the governor's discretion should be favoring the state, not the center. But the opposite is happening. So furthermore, the Supreme Court has repeatedly held that the governor shall only act on the aid and advice of Council of Minister. So we got the standpoint of the Supreme Court also from here. These three are the standpoint of the Supreme Court. So this is how you can write it down in the notes to use later in the answer writing. So moreover, a simple and plain reading of the article is sufficient to show how the meaning of the phrase withhold assent there form has been willfully misinterpreted to mean holding back the bill. So this, we can skip this, which means what is the misinterpretation? This is not important for us. What could have been the correct interpretation? That is important for us. And what is the most important part here? What is the opinion of the Supreme Court here, which we have already seen, because Supreme Court is the final interpreter of the Constitution. So this is the important portion here. How it has been misinterpreted or used by the politicals. So this is not of our importance. Let's now define and see the last thing, which was the time-bound governance. So what is happening in the other part of the world? So let's see what is happening in the United Kingdom. So there has been no royal veto since 1708. Royal veto means basically a replica of the governor. So where the assent to the Scottish Militia Bill was vetoed by the Queen Anne. So this is the last, let's say, the veto which rested with the royal family. So this can also use as an introduction, apart from what we already discussed, that we are still living, let's say, in the medieval times, while in the other word, the last such case or last veto used by any replica of governor or let's say the royal family was in 1708. So let's say what is happening in the USA. What is the case in USA? So there is a time limit of 10 days for the president to give assent or veto a bill. So there is 10 days is defined as the time limit. So punctuality is there. So if the president, let's say, does not sign or vetoes the bill within this time, it automatically becomes an act. So let's say president has 10 days in which he can either agree or disagree. If within 10 days it is not decided, then it is automatically agree. So if the president vetoes and returns the bill to the Congress or Senate, then both the chambers of Congress must override the veto for it to become a law. That means the final power is not again with the president. This veto can also be override. This is again a very good thing. So over time, matters involving an inexpressible delay in exercising powers by various authorities have been brought under the ambit of judicial review by the Constitutional Court. So one such case was again in Keisham Megha Chandra versus the Honorable Speaker of Manipur in 2020. So you can write down the name of this case also, Keisham Megha Chandra versus the state of Manipur in 2020. So what happened in this case is issued a writ of mandamus. So again, see, mandamus is very important writ. So should see what is the writ of mandamus, when it is applied, in the violation of which fundamental right, or what is the meaning of the mandamus. All right. So to the Speaker of Meghalaya Legislative Assembly to decide on the disqualification petitions under the 10th schedule of the Constitution. So again, 10th schedule was also last time asked. A very important schedule. So within a period of 4 weeks. So in the case filed by the state of Telangana against the governor, the Supreme Court found it fit to highlight the spirit of Article 200. As soon as possible after the presentation of the bill, held significant constitutional content and governor should necessarily bear this in mind. That means as soon as possible should mean something. The limit to discretionary power should be extremely limited. I'll tell you how to make notes and final answer writing also we will discuss. So as such, it would be appropriate for the various constitutional authorities such as governors exercising power under Article 200 and speakers acting as quasi-judicial tribunals. So this is again a very important term, quasi-judicial tribunals under the 10th schedule to evolve strict time frames and avoid unnecessary delay. So only such an approach will advance the constitutional scheme and safeguard the will of the people exercised through the legislature. Alright, so this was the thing. This was our discussion. Now let's see what are the important points in a gist session and how can we write the answer related to this question. So what are the things that you should note down? Let's say you are making notes and you are making notes about this issue, the governor issue. So first of all, you should clear the static portion. I have covered it already in the video, that what are the post, oath, powers of the governor and what is the relation of the governor with both state and center, and what is the role of the governor in maintaining federalism. If you can create some, let's say, example of any governor which have created good relation between the state and the center or has played a part in the maintenance of such good relation, then it will be very better. Second thing is what you should note down is the constitutional aspect. Let's say the origin of the issue, which we already talked about. You can mention B.R. Ambedkar here, and you can also mention the Supreme Court's view here. The various cases you can note down, which I have already told you, Samsher Singh case and the Manipur case. Third thing is you can see the talk about interpretation. Fourth thing, you can see the challenges involved, which I have already covered in the last video, and the way forward. Additionally, you can also read the various important terms which we mentioned, such as 10th schedule, quasi-judicial tribunals, the role of Supreme Court now, and what's happening in the other parts of the world. In one more thing, when you write the answer, let's say, so whenever you are writing the answer related to this question, in the introduction, you can write about the federalism, the constitutional punctuality, or the spirit of the democracy. Then you can write what are the opinions of the, let's say, B.R. Ambedkar related to this issue, what are the comments of the Supreme Court very recently in 2020 related to Article 200. If you mention these terms in the beginning of the question, then it will create a good impression. You can also mention the terms such as extremely limited, very rare, only on the advice of Council of Ministers. You can also make a diagram, let's say, of the world and highlight what is happening in the USA. The president has a veto, yes or no. President has a time frame of, let's say, 10 days. What's happening in the UK, there is no provision of any veto. And what's happening in India. So you can display it as per the mind map also. Another thing, if when you are writing, let's say, the challenges involved and the way forward, then keep it very limited to the spirit of democracy, federalism, legislature. In each line, you should use such a word which will represent the constitution itself, because the whole issue is related to the constitution only. In the way forward also, you should mention the role of Supreme Court and the people also through activism, which can force or the Supreme Court or the state legislative assemblies to file more resolutions and get this issue solved, and also enforce the same thing on other, let's say, speakers or the president also, to create time bound frame. and you can revolve the whole thing around the constitutional punctuality debate. So this was the editorial and answer writing session. We'll be coming up with more such sessions based on more editorials. For this lecture, I hope you learned enough. Thank you very much. Have a good day. I'm signing off. I'll see you in the next video. Keep studying and be bright, and have a good day.